So I did everything you're supposed to do. I went to school, I got a mildly acceptable ATAR so my parents don't disown me. I went to uni like a good boy and studied something respectable like finance and economics so I can have a good job and a happy life. I racked up around $32,000 worth of HECS debt, which is basically a loan for uni. It's like a student loan. Now back in my uni days when I wasn't really making that much money, this seemed like a huge burden. $30,000, how the hell am I going to pay that much money off? It's going to take me like 10 years, 15 years, and I just felt very shackled. But you see, a lot of people say that HECS debts are the best type of debts that a person could get, which sounds very weird. It sounds like an oxymoron. How can debt be good? How can owing money to people be a good thing? It doesn't make any sense. Isn't debt always bad? No. A HECS debt is considered a good type of debt, meaning that this loan allows you to theoretically get ahead financially and academically. If you do well in university and you get a degree, that increases your employment prospects, more earning potential, and then the benefits of a degree outweigh the costs, at least in theory. By the way, quick side note, I do think degrees are becoming slowly irrelevant for a lot of careers that are out there. Employers are caring more about experience more than anything else, but that's a topic for a different video. Some other examples of good debts include stuff like investment loans, home loans, business loans, and the whole idea is that the potential returns are going to outweigh the costs in the future. Bad debts include stuff like personal loans, credit cards, because the interest rates on these is super high. Now you might have the savings to pay off this student debt completely and you might be asking yourself, why don't I just do that? Like, I understand that it's a good debt, but I want to be debt free, so why don't I just pay it off? I had the exact same thoughts. Here's why I didn't pay it off. HECS debts don't actually charge interest like other debt that's out there. This is what makes it so good because you're basically borrowing money without paying a premium on top. These debts do go up, however, in line with the CPI or the Consumer Price Index, which is basically in line with inflation each year. So although it's increasing, everything else has gone up in that same time as well. So the government is trying to preserve the real cost of that debt over time. So as an example, $30,000 in 1990 is worth differently to $30,000 in 2022. So over the past couple of years, HECS debts have been going up by around 2% on average. Now with my money, I had two options. First option was to use my savings to pay off a debt which basically cost me nothing, or option number two, which is to use that money and invest it somewhere else and make a higher return. $30,000 invested in a standard index fund or an ETF returns around 7 to 10% on average, including market crashes, historically speaking. This means that in 10 years, you will have roughly doubled your money and end up with $60,000. As opposed to if you use that money to pay off the debt, yes, you're going to feel very good and you're going to be debt free, but that money had so much more earning potential that it doesn't have now because it's been used to pay off the debt. And this is exactly what I'm doing. I'm investing the money that I make rather than paying off this HECS debt because financially, it just makes more sense. The opportunity cost of paying off this debt is just way too high. My HECS debt is being repaid automatically each year when I lodge my tax return. Of course, this is what works for me. Obviously, this is not financial advice. I'm not telling you to invest or do anything like that. What's also worth mentioning is the fact that the government has a discount plan in place where if you pay upfront on your HECS debt, you can get a discount of 10%. So that could be useful if you want to go check it out. Make sure you have a read through the actual criteria as well. I'll leave a link in the description. The last thing I want to talk about is something that nobody mentions when it comes to HECS debts, is the fact that it does have an impact on your borrowing power. Now, I've worked as a mortgage broker in the past. I currently work in a bank and I've seen this many times with customers. The banks do take HECS debts into account only if you're earning above a certain amount of money, if you're earning above that threshold. If not, then they don't really factor it in. Now, depending on the bank, it can affect you differently, but very generally speaking, the more you're earning, the higher your HECS repayments and the lower your borrowing power is going to be. If you're earning above six figures, the impact could be over $100,000 on your borrowing power, so you have to keep that into account. But this is only if you're trying to borrow as much as possible. If you're borrowing well within your means, then it should be fine. Paying off your HECS debt isn't always a bad thing. Depending on your circumstances, it might even be worth it. If you only have a few $1,000s owing on your HECS and you're trying to borrow as much as possible, maybe for a pre-approval, you might tell the bank that you're happy to pay off the debt and they can provide you with a higher approval based on a condition that when the time comes, you will pay off that debt and provide proof. Obviously, you got to keep in mind that if you are paying off a debt, that means that you are going to have less cash available to put down for the actual house deposit. So there's a trade-off there for sure. I would highly recommend speaking with a mortgage broker, especially if it's your first property. If you want to know more about home loans, you can check out this playlist right here, which goes through everything I've learned in my whole career, stuff like borrowing power, credit scores, what banks look for, and everything like that. So go check it out. And guys, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now. If you want to know more about home loans,